That was exactly what my mother said as she flung my grandfather's favorite leather-bound book straight into the trash can, then poured the last of her champagne over it while laughing like destroying his memory was entertainment. But the second she left the kitchen, I pulled it out, dripping and warped, because she thought it was just another dusty relic. She was wrong. Hidden inside the hollowed pages was something she never knew existed. The original notarized will of Arthur Holloway, my grandfather, proving the deed she was using to sell the house was forged and that the entire estate, every dollar and every brick, belonged to me. She didn't just throw away a book, she handed me the weapon that would end her. Before I explain how I used that book and why silence became my sharpest tool, drop a comment below. Where are you listening from right now? I want to know who's in my corner. To understand why I didn't scream, cry, or confront her in that kitchen, you need to understand what happened an hour earlier. The funeral reception was winding down, and the house smelled like dying lilies and expensive perfume, the kind that clings to fabric and suffocates the air. I'd spent 3 hours refilling glasses, collecting coats, wiping spills, and standing quietly against walls in the house I'd grown up in, invisible while people praised my grandfather and congratulated my mother on handling everything so well. When the last guest finally left, I approached her while she sat at the head of the dining table reviewing paperwork with a man I didn't recognize, a sleek developer who looked like he valued square footage more than people. "Mom," I said softly, "could I have Grandpa's chess book, the one on the mantel? He taught me to play from it." She glanced up at me like the help had spoken, then flicked her eyes toward the shelf. "That dusty thing smells like smoke," she snapped, grabbing it. For a moment, I thought she was handing it to me. Instead, she tossed it onto a wooden chair beside her, shifted her weight, and sat directly on it. "Actually, leave it," she said, smoothing her skirt. "I need a boost. This table's too high for negotiations." She sat on my grandfather's memory like it was a cushion. My brother Marcus, leaning against the wall, scrolling his phone, snorted. "Good use for it," he said, tilting his champagne glass so sticky liquid spilled across the chair and soaked into the book's spine. "Oops." Neither of them looked at me. They just kept talking about tearing up the rose garden to install a pool. I stood there, nails biting into my palms, realizing to them I wasn't family, I was furniture. When they stepped outside to smoke cigars, I grabbed the book and rushed to the kitchen sink, blotting champagne from the warped leather, furious and shaking. That's when I felt the stiffness inside the cover. That's when I opened it, and that's when rage sharpened into something useful. If I ran outside waving this will, I knew exactly what would happen. My mother would snatch it, shred it, claim it was fake, and bury me in probate court for years with money I didn't have. Civil court wasn't enough. I didn't just want the house, I wanted justice. I looked down at the soaked pages and realized something terrifying and powerful. My silence was more dangerous than my voice. If I stayed quiet and let them believe they owned the house, they'd eventually try to turn that fake ownership into cash. And the moment they signed legal documents using property they didn't own, it wouldn't be family drama anymore. It would be fraud. Federal fraud. I slipped the book into my tote bag under a sweater, wiped the counter clean, and walked back outside with their empty glasses, smiling politely. Greed would be the trap. My silence would be the bait. 2 weeks later, the trap began to close. I was in the sunroom polishing windows, invisible as always, while my mother paced across the hardwood, heels clicking sharply. The sale of the estate had stalled. The title search was dragging because records dated back to the 1940s, and the developer was getting nervous. But my mother couldn't wait. She had debts I wasn't supposed to know about, gambling losses from private clubs, designer spending habits, and a lifestyle that required nearly $10,000 a month just to maintain appearances. "I need cash now, Marcus," she hissed, throwing a letter onto the desk. "Creditors are calling." Marcus lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone. "Then take a bridge loan, hard money. I know a guy. He doesn't ask too many questions about title history as long as there's a deed and a notary. High interest, but who cares? We pay it off when the house sells." My heart started pounding so hard I felt dizzy. A hard money loan was fast, predatory, and reckless, exactly the kind of mistake desperate, greedy people make. "How much?" she asked. 500 grand, cash wire, immediate disbursement. She stopped pacing. I watched greed smooth the worry lines from her face. Do it. Friday. They were going to use my house as collateral for $500,000. They were going to sign legal documents claiming ownership they didn't have. They assumed I was too stupid to understand what collateral meant. They assumed I was just Lena, the girl who cleaned windows and poured coffee. I finished the pain, picked up my bucket, and walked out calmly before my shaking hands gave me away. In the laundry room, I shut the door and dialed a number I'd memorized 2 weeks earlier. "Mr. Holloway?" I whispered when the lawyer answered. "It's happening. They're taking out a mortgage. They're signing Friday." His voice was gravelly and serious. "Once they sign, there's no going back. That's bank fraud, wire fraud, prison." I stared at my reflection in the washing machine door, calm, pale, steady. "I know," I said. "Let them sign." Friday morning arrived with the suffocating silence of a courtroom before the verdict. I spent 2 days scrubbing spotless floors, keeping my head down, making myself invisible. I needed them to see me as furniture, not a person, because people are threats. Furniture is ignored. To my mother and brother, I was the daughter who didn't make the cut, the quiet one who cleaned up messes while adults handled business. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. It wasn't police, not yet. It was Mr. Dalton, the loan officer, small, slick, wearing a suit that screamed expensive but fit like borrowed confidence, followed by a stern-faced notary carrying a heavy briefcase. They set up in the library, spreading paperwork across my grandfather's mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd taught me chess strategies on rainy afternoons. Now it was being used to sell off his legacy. I entered with a tray of coffee and biscuits, eyes lowered, placing it quietly on the side table. My mother didn't even glance at me. Her attention was locked on Dalton's laptop. "So once I sign the funds release?" she asked. "Immediately. As soon as the notary stamps the deed of trust and promissory note, I authorize the wire. You'll see the $500,000 in minutes. Just remember, the interest rate is aggressive." "We won't miss payments," Marcus cut in smoothly, leaning over her shoulder. "The property's selling next month. This is just a bridge." He was lying. The developer had already backed out. They weren't bridging anything. They were running. They were cashing out a chip they didn't own before the casino realized it was counterfeit. "Standard procedure," Dalton said, sliding documents forward. "Sign here, here, and initial page 4. I poured coffee slowly, stretching time, watching. I needed to see the exact moment intent became crime. My mother picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. That was the terrifying part. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look at the portrait of my grandfather on the wall. She just pressed ink to paper and signed her name, Margaret Holloway, owner. Across the loan application, the deed of trust, the affidavit of ownership. With every stroke, she dug herself deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. This wasn't lying to family anymore. This was lying to federally insured institutions. This was wire fraud. This was bank fraud. The notary reviewed IDs, then stamped the documents with a heavy thud that echoed through the room like a gunshot. It was done. The lie was now legally alive. "Congratulations," Dalton said, typing. "Initiating wire transfer." I picked up the empty cream pitcher and walked into the hallway, heart pounding but face blank. I reached into my apron pocket and touched my phone. I was already on an active call. I just needed one last nail. A cheerful chime broke the silence from Dalton's laptop. He turned the screen around with a grin. "Transfer complete. $500,000 successfully wired to the account of Margaret Holloway." My mother let out a sound between laughter and sobbing, clutching Marcus's arm. "We did it," she breathed. "We're rich." Marcus was already pulling out his phone. "Told you, easy money." I stood in the doorway, thumb hovering over my phone's mute button. "Mom," I said softly, trembling just enough to sound harmless. "So the money's in your account? You officially mortgaged the house?" She spun on me, sneering. "Of course I did, Lena. The house is mine. Now get out of my sight before I have security throw you out." "Security?" I asked, calmly, dropping the tremble. "I don't think you'll need them." I unmuted the line. "Did you get that, Mr. Holloway?" "Loud and clear," his voice crackled. "Move away from the door." I stepped aside. The front door didn't open, it burst inward. 4 federal agents in windbreakers stormed into the library, followed by the district attorney and Mr. Holloway. "Federal agents," one shouted, "step away from the desk." Chaos exploded. My mother screamed, dropping her coffee cup, which shattered across the floor. Marcus stumbled backward into a chair. "What is this?" she shrieked. "Who are you? Get out of my house." "It's not your house," I said, walking into the center of the room. I reached into my bag and pulled out the book. I opened the hollowed cover and removed the document I'd guarded for 2 weeks. "This is my grandfather's original notarized will," I said calmly, handing it to the lead agent. "He left everything to me. My mother just used property she doesn't own to secure a federal loan. That's wire fraud. That's bank fraud." The realization hit the room like a shockwave, but the best reaction wasn't hers, it was Dalton's. The loan officer's face drained white as he looked from badges to documents. "She told me the title was clean," he shouted, thrusting his laptop forward. "I have emails. She swore she owned it." "You can explain it to a judge," the agent said, taking the laptop. Another agent stepped toward my mother. She recoiled. "Don't touch me. I'm Margaret Holloway. This is my house." "Margaret Holloway," the agent said evenly, snapping cuffs around her wrists, "you're under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and aggravated identity theft." The click of those cuffs was better than money, better than property. It was the sound of consequences. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before, then spat, "You little witch." "The truth is patient, Mom," I said coldly, and it just ran out of time. As they led her toward the door, I exhaled for the first time in months. It was over. The house was safe. The monster was in chains. I forgot one thing. Monsters rarely hunt alone. "Officer, wait," Marcus said smoothly. He stood, brushed lint from his blazer, and opened his briefcase like he'd rehearsed this moment. "You're arresting the wrong person." "Back off," the agent warned. "I'm afraid I can't." Marcus produced a document stamped with an official seal and handed it over with a pitying smile. "Lena Holloway lacks legal capacity to accuse anyone of anything. As of 9 this morning, she's a ward of the state." The agent scanned it. "What is this?" "An emergency guardianship order," Marcus announced. "Severe paranoid delusions, memory fabrication, history of planting evidence." He turned to me gently. "It's okay, Lena, you're having an episode. We're getting you help." The room froze. A judge's signature carried weight. If I was incompetent, my testimony collapsed. The will became suspect. The arrest became premature. "Sir," the agent told Mr. Holloway, "this order grants temporary custody of Lena and her estate to Marcus Holloway. We may need to pause." My mother straightened in her cuffs, a cruel smile blooming. "I told you," she hissed, "you've always been sick." For 10 terrifying seconds, only the grandfather clock moved. The walls felt like they were closing in. This was their final move. Institutionalize me, medicate me into silence, sell the house while I couldn't fight back. I looked at Mr. Holloway. He wasn't worried, he looked bored. "Officer," he said calmly, stepping forward, "before you enforce that order, read the addendum to Arthur Holloway's will, Clause 14, subsection B, the competency clause." Marcus scoffed. "A will doesn't override a court order." "It does when the order was obtained through perjury," Holloway snapped, producing another document. Arthur anticipated this. Any beneficiary who challenges another beneficiary's mental competence must submit to sworn polygraph and produce a legitimate medical evaluation. We have one. "We do too," Marcus barked, waving a paper. "Dr. Klein signed this affidavit this morning." "Dr. Klein?" Holloway raised an eyebrow. "The same Dr. Klein who lost his license for insurance fraud? Interesting, because we have this." He handed over another file. Lena voluntarily completed a full forensic psychiatric evaluation yesterday with the state's chief psychiatrist, sound mind, superior cognitive function, fully competent. The agent compared the documents, a rushed affidavit from a disgraced doctor versus a clean, official evaluation dated less than 24 hours ago. Grandpa was always 3 moves ahead, I said quietly. He didn't just leave me money, he left me armor. The agent's hesitation vanished. He turned to Marcus. Sir, did you use a fraudulent medical affidavit to obtain a court order? That's perjury and obstruction of justice. Marcus's smirk collapsed. I didn't know, he stammered. The doctor said, Turn around, the agent ordered. Hands behind your back. No, Marcus stumbled backward. You can't do this. I'm the guardian. The cuffs snapped shut mid-sentence. You're not a guardian, I said as they led him out beside our mother. You're just another pawn. 6 months later, the mildew and stale champagne were gone, replaced with fresh paint, sea salt, and something sharper, justice. The hard money loan died the moment federal indictments landed. Banks don't enforce contracts built on felonies, especially when collateral was stolen. The title is clean now. The house is mine, legally, morally, completely. I didn't sell the estate. That would have been easy money, but Grandpa didn't leave me this place to cash out. He left it to make a point. I'm renovating the East Wing. By next spring, it won't just be a house, it'll be the Arthur Holloway Haven, a transitional home for women escaping financial abuse. I'm turning the prison my mother built into a fortress for people like me. I stand on the balcony now, wind in my hair, sipping Earl Grey from her prized bone china cup, the one she once screamed at me for touching when I was 12. It tastes better now. Inside, the library is restored. Grandpa's chessboard sits mid-game, except I made one change. 2 black pawns are missing. My phone buzzes. A collect call from county jail. Margaret calls weekly. Sometimes Marcus tries. They want commissary money. They want explanations. They want to blame me. I don't argue. I don't rage. I open my contacts, tap Mother, and hit block. Then I do the same for Brother. I didn't just inherit a house, Grandpa. I inherited my dignity. I inherited the right to say no. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I was stupid because I poured coffee while they plotted. They forgot what you taught me. In chess, the quiet pieces are often the ones setting the trap. You don't flip the board to win. You let your opponent make the wrong move. I take one more sip, glance at the board, and smile. Checkmate, Grandpa.